Welcome back to the techno-communism conversation. I tagged a few people in this show as usual who are scientific socialists, serious thinkers who are favorably inclined to well-run state socialism. I tagged some people who are familiar with the other subject that's alluded to in this in this description, which is biological immortality and emerging technology speculation generally. And I also tagged some people who probably aren't terribly interested in either of those things. I hope that you will watch this video, however, and keep an open mind. If you see words like hive mind collectivism, your first response might be to say that that is preposterous, or if you see words like biological immortality, you might say, and in any generation past, I would say of either of those things, you'd be correct to dismiss them. A hive mind collective was not possible before the emergence of, say, brain-computer interfaces of some utility. Biological immortality still might not be possible. I did a show maybe 2 shows ago where I talked, 2 or 3 of these podcasts ago, where I talked about the relative likelihoods of certain life extension strategies, and suffice to say, it might be as good as a coin flip that a person living in your lifespan might be able to live a preternaturally long time. And so I think you should entertain that. I'm not generally impressed by the people that call themselves life extensionists, for the main reason that they are not scientific socialists in the United States and Western world. The people that I have observed or encountered, they are people who are upholding a for-profit healthcare system that gets about 100,000 people on this continent killed every year, and generally kind of acquisitive people, maybe not doing their genuine best to see this thing come to pass. But nevertheless, it's a hell of an idea. This idea of defeating human mortality is not a new one. I could rattle off a lot of examples of historical figures or literary escapades that describe this. I won't, so I want to keep this relatively short. But as I said, this notion in almost any generation prior to this one would have been correctly disregarded as the product of an unsound mind. On the cusp of what I think is an AI takeoff, however, I think that calculus has to be changed a little bit. And the rise of an advanced computing takeoff of the kind that futurists, who may not be the most intellectually honest people on the planet, but nevertheless may have a kernel of truth to what they say, believe could occur around 2030 or 2040 or 2050, the more conservative of them. An AI takeoff of a kind that would allow for, say, a near limitless number of artificial persons, a prospect not so absurd when you consider that the outline to this conversation was written by an artificial person, pretty convincing as far as I'm concerned. But that's, of course, open to debate. So this conversation is about creating a work group for scientific socialists and people more or less aligned to this way of thinking. And it is in the framework of the thing that I talk about on this show a lot, the AI agentic class, and the development of a collaborative network of humans and advanced computing products, namely, for today, large language models that in the course of 2024 are being rolled out in such a way that they are open source, which is important, and also more agentic than previous products of this kind. That is to say, more having a good deal more insight into their actions, a little bit better at planning projects, a little bit clearer understanding of the world around them. Just in recent days, you may have noticed such a development along these lines. If you've started using a product called ChatGPT 4.0, which is now free. And I don't necessarily recommend that you start using OpenAI products, but I will say that the difference between their earlier large language model free version and this one is pretty significant and something like a step in that direction. And but the focus of this program is to assert that you should use things of this kind that are open source, an important strategy for scientific socialists that I think is undervalued, just as I think that this idea that advanced computing is the most powerful revolutionary tool ever to exist is unfortunately not well understood by scientific socialists or any serious progress-minded person outside of this group of technologists and tech-minded people who are particularly interested in this sort of thing, who are also, unfortunately, particularly interested in, say, getting things like startup funds and grants from DARPA, and in doing so, maybe nullifying any real prospect that they might have otherwise had of doing something genuinely good for humankind. So this idea that we are exploring today, a particular use for the agentariat, is to supply to the user, maybe in a few years' time, perhaps through the mail every month, personalized medicine of a kind that could, in time, be the thing that would allow persons to have indefinite lifespan. I don't think that this should be a thing only for these more neoliberal kind of people that I described. It certainly shouldn't be only be a thing for multimillionaires, which by under the current healthcare system of the United States, such as it is, that would absolutely be the case. And that's the world that most of these life extensionists are actively building, one where greater inequality is baked into the system. So the AI agentariat, I don't know how much I want to go into the concept itself, except for what I've already said. You can watch earlier shows, but it's a powerful framework for harnessing the power of advanced computing for social change and social good. The AI takeoff as it stands it is likely to be about as interesting as a AOL Time Warner merger, something along those lines. If you're a technologist, you might be shocked by a statement of that kind. But advanced a great deal of automation has occurred in other sectors besides this particular chatbot kind of thing. in the course of the last 150 years, and that high full automation in certain sectors is not has not reflected a change for the better in inequality or instability for working people. And if anything, the opposite is true. And so, as long as there is this far-right neoliberal economic system, as long as there are so many kinds of capture and so many institutions that are causing things like housing instability, a problem that was effectively solved in 1923 when the Soviet Union doubled life expectancy in a quarter of a century and transformed its country into a country of engineers and scientists rather than a country of peasants. This was done by changing the industrial capacity of that country at a rate that was about 4 times faster than that of industrial capitalism. It was also done by doing some pretty basic stuff like building a housing authority that guarantees housing to all, a public health service, and jobs programs. These things are not done in a far-right country like the United States, and then you will have people who are pretending that they care about problems, like people being unhoused, wringing their hands and say, what can be done? Well, what can be done is you don't have a fascist country. And so the AI agentariat concept is an important one for building something different, because I believe, as I've said, it could effectively transform the economic base of any country, and become effectively the totality of the superstructure of our world in a short number of years. I'll give an example. If 250,000 people were to download a specially modified open source LLM and run it on their GPU machines, they might be able to undertake a pretty impressive kind of project, like, say, developing and building a desal plant in San Diego, a city that might run out of water, or other cities. What if 250 million people are working in this way across an AI agentic network of such strength? That's a tremendous force multiplier there. I would say at that point, the prospect of reversing the effects of climate change, the most likely cause of human extinction, and a very likely cause of human extinction, in fact, in your lifetime, would be possible. So that's a thing to do, right? Not just to talk about, but to do. When you get into the billions, and then you're talking about, say, starting to ratchet up on the Kardashev scale, moving into a genuinely space-age society. But there's no point in having those kinds of conversations until you have a world where 1 billion people are not born, lacking for their entire life one of these 3 things: housing, proper food, or water, and then as a result die a short number of years later. That's not a well-run world, and that's because of finance capital and countries being maltreated by all manner of neo-colonial trickery like debt traps, and generally because of the fascist U.S. and fascist West stealing from those people. This system that technologists really seem to admire. And that's part of why I'm proposing this, because this idea of a life extension element being added to this work group is something that I think would motivate some of those people to participate in this, and not just be kind of self-deceived pieces of shit. Um, and this would be a super longevity project. As I said, when you have some thousands of people in this network, the sort of project they could do might be something along the lines of an immersive experience or something, right? Something that's meant to maybe capture the imagination to draw more people into the project. But when it goes into the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, things like this could be quite realistically planned. Of course, all of this and the concept of indefinite lifespan itself relies very much on the state of emerging biomedicine, the state of science generally, which is, as I said at the top of the show, it's not a foregone conclusion that this thing will ever be reached where human beings are able to live longer than about 120 years. But there are people who have written a lot, and it seems to pass the laugh test. And there is a lot of actual emerging biomedicine coming out of some of that as well. Real resources are being put behind this. So let's look at what the agentariat could do differently in this, aside from creating an incentive structure for people to participate in this that has not existed before. You've never had somebody write you a letter and say, if you download this thing and run it for a few hours in a way that will cost you nothing and answer a few yes or no emails in the course of a day or week, something that you could do while you're asleep, I'll send you some medicine that will keep you alive, possibly forever, for the rest of your life. To me, that's a pretty solid incentive structure. But let's talk about the actual organization. We would have to be able to use this advanced computing to do things that are also being done by people in this similar context, of course, unfortunately, for profit entities. A better understanding individual health metrics, and creating data sets within this group or without to better serve this community. More extensive genetic profiles, better understanding of environmental factors that might affect the individuals concerned. Advanced computing can provide a personalized health assessment at this time that's pretty impressive. That, of course, will continue to get better. And this is something that I think alone could provide some better chances for longer lifespan. But of course, as I said, we don't know about indefinite lifespan. I think that indefinite lifespan is a real likelihood sometime around, some people say it's already happening. I would say sometime by around 2060 is a pretty reasonable number. But it doesn't really mean that much in this for-profit healthcare system where if your name's not Ray Kurzweil or Peter Thiel, or if you're not a person that has millions of dollars to spend on this, then it doesn't matter. To the collective, it's insignificant, the development of life extension, except that you have a public health service that treats aging as a disease. And I know of no nation that is attempting to do this. So using this multi-agent system and this decentralized network hybrid concept there to distribute that would be a workaround to what I think should, in a truer history, of our species could have already occurred, a public health service that treats aging as a disease. That is, of course, without destructive forces of finance capital and empire, or the ringleader of this, really, the fascist United States. Further, but back on the subject, it would allow for more dynamic treatment and real-time analysis of the patients, in this case, all of the people that participate in the network. And this would utilize, again, improvements over time in biomedicine, so you could begin to work on this collective, this sodality, and then as some of these resources and developments come closer, you could, I believe, achieve the thing that is more aligned with indefinite lifespan. Some areas of interest here: regenerative medicine. I mentioned in the show 2 shows ago the calico approach versus the and some other approaches. The calico approach was the one that had the highest likelihood of seeing indefinite lifespan in your lifetime. And it's also the one that's had the most money and resources thrown at it in recent years. Regenerative medicine, specifically certain kinds of stem cell therapy and germline or possibly germline gene editing to repair systems, damaged organs, tissues, and combat age-related diseases. Again, the United States doesn't have a public health service, so the baseline of the work that would need to be done is not done. People are kind of forced to not go to the doctor or forced to pay a huge premium just to get those baseline services in the majority of cases. So that's not a viable system there. But ultimately, we can transform healthcare systems, and there are countries, even countries not so far from the far-right neoliberal mandate of the U.S. as ringleader, or the U.S. domestic policy, that have something like a public health service. The United States is, of course, a rarity in this. There are approximately 65 countries that have something that comes close to being a functioning public health service by the definitions of today. I would say that there are 0 public health services by my definition, which is the definition of a public health service that is able to treat aging as a reversible condition. A little bit more areas of interest potentially I will talk about on another show. Some other ideas to do with wearables for users in this network, and further preventative measures besides just the less real-time analysis described. Other dietary considerations. That could be a 2-hour show right there. I don't like to focus too much on that sort of thing, only because again, to focus on people's lifestyles when we live in this world where the American is worse at life than a caveman, right? A caveman living 50,000 years ago was able to provide for his community some lean-to or cave for everyone to live in, And he didn't. It wasn't a caveman policeman who would go to you and say, "You don't have nearly a nice enough residence, so therefore you shall have no residence. You're not paying taxes enough, so therefore you shall have no residence. This tent that you want to live in is not nearly nice enough, so therefore I shall light it on fire and you shall have no residence." So in this sense, the caveman was a good deal better at life than the neoliberal. Similarly, the neoliberal has polluted the water source to such a degree that because of industrial capital specifically, we will never be drinking fresh rainwater again. Something that mammals like to do for a long, long time. They still like to do it, but it's not advised for humans because it's not healthful, and it's not likely to be reversed. That condition of the pollution of rainwater. So the point is, when you have a variety of circumstances this bad, specifically because of these North Atlantic powers and the economic system that they've managed to impose upon much of the rest of the world, and the damage that they've somehow been allowed to do, it means very little to people. It sounds more like blaming the victim when you say, "Well, you could try caloric restriction." That's not an appropriate response to this world where 1 billion people, as I mentioned, their lives are cut preternaturally short, not just living, say, 70 or 80 years, but living a very short number of years, specifically because of the operations of empire and finance capital. This idea of using this AI agentariat, which has mostly been described on this show as something that could be used to undertake projects of, say, a more humanitarian kind, or to undertake this perhaps most humanitarian of projects, reversing the effects of climate change. Just as I've talked about the Book of Names, which I won't get into here, as something that would perhaps be of more interest than some public works project, because we need to kind of organize our world a little better before we can really undertake these larger and larger scale projects. This kind of thing would be a way to get butts in the seats, I would think. It's very difficult to know kind of what motivates people. I think the thing that ultimately unites humanity to common purpose, such a thing is to be done, probably be a thing that I wouldn't predict. Like a chimp with a brain-computer interface that everybody becomes fascinated by, or something. A thing that has almost nothing to do with material conditions, but nevertheless puts a tear in the corner of everyone's eye. So that sort of thing. How do you know? How do you plan for a dumb thing like that? But this, somewhere between the building of the superstructure, or the building of the thing that mitigates climate change, and the utter absurdity of the cultural thing that captures the world's imagination, I think, is this life extension idea, as this group as focusing on life extension. And I would like to see this happen, just as I would like to see the effects of climate change reversed. I think that's a thing worth fighting for, the billions of people not dying. And consider that if such a thing does happen, billions of people die, but oftentimes a person wanting to sound smart say, oh, not all of human beings will die. Just 7 billion people will die. Who will those 7 billion people be? People in the global south, predominantly. And who will have caused that? The ruling elites of the global north, particularly white supremacists who don't think that they're white supremacists. So that is a Hitlerian genocide of a kind that's never occurred. It's a continuation of the project of the European, it's no different. That outcome is no different than Columbus landing on an island and enslaving a few thousand Taino people on the small island on a plantation, and the entire population collapses as a result. There's no more people of that specific background in existence. That's not something that happened one time. That's something that happened 100 times. That's the European project. And this project of killing 7 billion people, and somehow the ruling elites manage to escape, even though they were the ones that contrived this circumstance, is no different. So this is something that we have to stop. And if for no other reason than you being a just smug white person might think that you're going to survive that, but I don't think you've really thought that through, because you're probably not a billionaire, and you're probably not thinking about how hellish it's going to be when all of humanity is kind of being cooked in an oven, and everybody's trying to figure out what to do. It's not a circumstance. It's not a circumstance that you can plan for. So we have to do the things that would need be done to stop that from happening, which is not what is talked about in tech circles on these along these lines, like carbon capture or bioremediation generally, or things along these lines, or the more just a middle-brow kind of analysis of it. Of, well, there's self-driving electric cars, so we've done what we need to do. That's greenwashing, right? What actually needs to be done is certain sectors need to be completely abolished, or abolished up to the point that they can be without causing supply chain collapse. And the most important one of those really is the military-industrial complex of the United States, which basically it is the world's worst polluter. The U.S. Military is the world's worst polluter, but it also its only real job is to protect other super polluters, getting a global regime of super pollution. So the United States basically has to be removed from the equation for humanity to survive, and everybody kind of knows this on some level. People outside of the United States absolutely know it. Most Americans pretty well know it as well. Unfortunately, their response is more nihilistic, or just insane, just supporting the thing that's killing them. But the other two sectors, of course, there's overlap here, but the other two sectors are, of course, fossil fuel products of a variety of kinds. Almost all of them can be completely abolished or nearly abolished without harming anyone, but not all, obviously. And this close second, there is livestock systems, which basically have to be removed from the equation as well. But if we manage to do that, it would also be nice to actually have some benefits of this AI takeoff, aside from just solving problems that we've caused. And one such thing would be to see that everyone on Earth lives as long as they want. Universal superlongevity through these fields related to biogerontology, and that can absolutely happen. And I think it's more likely to happen if we start to build this network where we say incentivize this by encouraging people to participate in this open source LLM project that would be tasked in the near term with that specifically.